emergency for the first time in about...
This is Jim, and,
Receiving this message. We are Ken Jennings and John Roderick. We speak to you from our present, which we can only assume is your distant past, the turbulent time that was the early 21st century.
Fearing the great cataclysm that will surely befall our civilization, we began this monumental reference of strange and obscure human knowledge. These recordings represent our attempt to compile and preserve wonders and esoterica that would otherwise be lost.
So whether you're listening from an advanced civilization or have just reinvented the technology to decrypt our transmissions, this is our legacy to you.
This is our time capsule. This is the Omnibus. You have accessed entry 687.MT0542. Certificate number 43318. Kim's Video.
Now you can rent all new releases or anything else for 5 days.
Really?
Yes, you can just enjoy it at your own pace. At other video stores, you only get 1 day on new releases. So you can't enjoy it because you're too worried about getting it back on time. And then you got to fly out the door in order to get to the video store before it closes. And the clock is ticking, the phone is ringing, the late fees are piling up so high.
I think I have Kim's Video. Downloaded it.
Kim Basinger?
No.
Kim Carnes?
No. Although I do have her video. You know, Kim Carnes appears in the documentary about We Are the World. Have you watched this documentary?
I have watched this documentary.
And the one person that seems like an artifact of their time that does not maybe belong on this superstar list of people that have each sold 150 million records, like Billy Joel, Stevie Wonder, Bob Dylan, is Kim Carnes.
I'm trying to think if there's any other footnotes there that are funny. I mean, Dan Aykroyd being there is funny for a different reason.
Yeah, and he actually, watching the documentary, stayed quiet and just seemed like really happy to be there. But
Kim Carnes did not know her place in the world.
You know, Lindsey Buckingham doesn't say anything, but Lindsey Buckingham was on the greatest selling record of all time, or the second greatest record of all time. And Huey Lewis sold 40 million records.
It's very early for Huey Lewis, right? Like,
I think 80.
Didn't Sports come out in?
It was out by then.
Oh, Sports is 83. You're right. Sports is the previous year.
So he's
the biggest star in the world at the time.
He's super big, and I think although maybe at the time Cyndi Lauper would have been a little bit of a fresh face, a stretch. She's sold 60 million albums by present day, but Kim Carnes sort of dropped off the rock and roll map.
Almost had almost immediately, right? Isn't Betty Davis size 82 or something?
Yeah, and I don't think she wasn't troubling the charts anymore. But she was at the American Music Awards, so there you go.
1981, I think. So the funny thing is, I want to talk about physical media and video rental nostalgia, and it took you 6 seconds to start talking about a new streaming program that everyone we know is talking about and really humanizes Bob Dylan for a change.
It does. Boy, he's so awkward and panicky.
He really needs Stevie Wonder.
Stevie Wonder
is his seeing eye dog.
Stevie Wonder imitated him to himself, and then Bob imitated Stevie imitating him, and it became the iconic verse of that song.
So if you're doing an impression of Bob Dylan today, you might be doing an impression of Bob Dylan doing Stevie Wonder doing Bob Dylan.
Yeah. It's phenomenal. He was so pleased. So much like, Stevie, can you help me out here?
I feel like we've already named 2 great porn movies. Kim's Video and...
Stevie, can you help me out?
No, Bob Dylan doing Stevie Wonder doing Bob Dylan.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, I'd rent that.
Would you?
No, I probably would. Did you ever... I don't know if I know the answer to this. Do you own a player that will play any kind of physical video? Do you own a Blu-ray or DVD player right now?
Somewhere in this house, there is a DVD player that's not hooked up, that's leaning against the wall of a cabinet.
So you do own one, but it's not plugged into anything.
When our daughter was born 12 years ago, we had a DVD player hooked up to a cathode ray television through some combination.
That's what makes the digital image look really good.
Yeah, some combination of adapters and other sort of, like...
no, they all had... I think everything still had RCA. Well, maybe the DVDs didn't have RCA out.
No, they didn't.
Then.
They didn't. You had to go through had to order a special part. But we had the DVDs of all of The West Wing, which we watched all the way through. And then I think somebody bought me the DVD... the original box set DVD of Mad Men. So Mad Men is one of these
You own two
shows.
DVDs.
Yeah.
And it's The West Wing and Mad Men.
No, have you ever done this? I went on Amazon, and you actually can see all your Amazon orders back to the first one. You've done this.
It's fun.
And my first Amazon orders were, maybe the first couple were but very early on, I ordered all those classic album DVDs where they would take the old recording, the 2-inch tape. They'd rent a studio, they'd cue them up, they'd get the artist to come in, and they'd play Rumors or something, and then they would solo the tracks. And the artist would say like, oh yeah, this is, it's the famous one where Steely Dan is listening and they're soloing all the solos they didn't use. And like mocking the guitar players.
Oh, I've never seen this.
It's great. And so I bought them all, the whole series, and we used to watch them on tour.
Does that mean you had a DVD player in the hotel or in the bus, or?
Oh, you could watch DVDs on your computer.
Yeah, you just put it in your laptop.
Put them in the laptop.
I still have a laptop with a physical drive, although they're harder and harder to find.
Yeah, because you use Dell computers, and this one was probably made last year, but
it's hard. It's hard to find one of these that doesn't have a touchscreen and still has a drive I could put in a disc if I want to watch West Wing on the road.
Does it have a Betamax on it too?
Yeah, it does. It's got a big, chunky
cathode ray too.
I do have an external Blu-ray drive. I don't know why I got this one.
But in your home theater, do you routinely watch? Because you have a large library of physical media.
I probably own almost 2,000 movies.
Do you have
disc.
Cocoon?
I don't have Cocoon.
Because you can't get Cocoon.
Wait, you can't get Cocoon?
You cannot get Cocoon.
Can you get Cocoon too?
I think Electric Boogaloo.
You're saying Cocoon is not out on Blu-ray?
Cocoon might be on a Blu-ray, but you can't stream it anywhere. You can't find it. It's a secret. The Cocoon is one of the very few movies that somehow fell through an ownership crack.
Cocoon does not seem to be on Blu-ray.
It's impossible to find.
It looks like there's a German. If you look it up on Amazon, there's a German one.
Oh, Das Cocoon?
I think it's Der Cocoon.
Oh, Der Cocoon.
I don't know.
Spelled with K's. Do you have the theatrical version of Star Wars?
Well, I think it's an extra on the current version of Star Wars.
No, you can't watch it on the current version of Star Wars.
Yeah, but it's some kind of low quality, scratchy version of it as an extra on the
I
Blu-ray
thought George Lucas had embargoed all of the Star Warses besides the one that has Jabba the Hutt walking around.
I think it's a historical artifact because today's kids will watch it and be like, "Wait, they skipped the part where he stepped on Jabba the Hutt's tail. Where's the disco number? How come the Ewoks aren't doing disco?" I was just talking to our friend Luke yesterday. This made me think of it, and he was saying that he wanted to watch Streetwise the other day, the Oscar-nominated documentary about Seattle street culture, about street kids, homeless kids in Seattle. And
we didn't call them homeless at the time.
We call them just cool.
Just cool.
Just bitchin' kids.
Just cool kids that got out of their stupid house with their stupid parents.
We called them avrats, which is worse than homeless.
We did. Avrats is exactly what we called them.
They called themselves avrats also. So
I was never an avrat. They were around, I was the same age. One time, an avrat tried to beat me up with a skateboard. Like came at me with the trucks of a skateboard in their hands, like swinging the skateboard at me.
I will never go to that post office on University Way because I'm still too traumatized by kids yelling at me in the 90s.
Yeah, this was up by the Jack in the Box. There used to be a 7-Eleven there, and it was some drug deal gone wrong that I wasn't even involved in. He was like, "I'm coming after you, man."
That was also the Jack in the Box that started the E. coli epidemic.
And I ate at that Jack in the Box during that and got really sick.
I thought you were going to say you got a discount. No, you got really sick.
I got really sick because I ate there that in that 2-day period, and then all those people started dying.
This implies that you are some kind of Superman that can't get E. coli.
Well, I got E. coli, but I survived it because I was a Superman, and also my body was already a toxic environment. E. coli couldn't.
Yeah, I was about to say, if
survive.
you're eating Jack in the Box, maybe E. coli is the least of your problems.
Well, I have washed it down with three Michelob 40 ounces. There was no way E. coli was going to kill me if that didn't.
Anyway, Luke said he wanted to watch Streetwise and was shocked that it wasn't on streaming. People are often amazed that pretty much, a huge part of film history is unwatchable without physical media.
But now, wait a minute. You're on the board of directors of Scarecrow Video. Surely Streetwise is part of your collection.
Of my collection at Scarecrow. Yes, Scarecrow owns Streetwise.
Scarecrow has it, and you can rent it there.
The beauty of... Let me just put in a plug for Scarecrow Video.
Yeah, do it.
By the way, do you have a Scarecrow card? Did you ever rent there?
I did rent there back when I was part of the dating pool, and that was a way to have a cool date with a cool girl.
Scarecrow and chill.
Yeah, want to watch some crazy movie that you can't see anywhere else, and I'd run over to Scarecrow and find some documentary about Seattle Avrats. But I let that lapse a long time ago when I stopped having any physical.
They still have you on file, but if you ever need to rent anything there, you'll have to.
Can I drop your name?
Reboot your account. I have a few punches left. You could probably they'll probably let you rent for free on my account.
Well, now
you can rent a player, by the way, if you want to go to Scarecrow and you don't have a Blu-ray or a DVD or a VHS to play the thing you're getting from them.
Yeah, Laserdisc,
4K, they will rent you a player with your disc.
I don't even have a TV.
Then they'll rent you a TV.
But no, tell the futurelings about Scarecrow Video because it may be relevant to their interests.
It was always a cool video store. It was kind of Seattle's coolest video store. I went there when I was in college, and it was amazing that they had.
Faces of Death 3.
They did have all that stuff. They have a huge psychotronic sexploitation collection, but they have everything. Is the idea, which means, for me at that age, it was like, this is a Miyazaki movie and those aren't even out here. How do they have this? Or this is a Michael Powell movie that's only ever been released in the UK. And, today those are easy things to find on streaming or wherever. But at the time I was like, how do they have this? Because they would have everything. Taiwanese New Wave movies and unsubtitled Middle Eastern stuff and crazy compilations of wrestling, women's wrestling from the 60s. And if anybody ever made it, it was there. And their current collection is about 147,000 items, which would make it the largest publicly accessible video archive in North America, if not the world.
Wow. So more than Paul Allen or not as many as Paul Allen?
I mean, Paul Allen had his own collection, which I
Yes,
think
he
has
did.
been dispersed now.
Yeah.
But I bet Scarecrow has a ton of stuff that Paul didn't have, and possibly vice versa. He had some very eccentric interests.
The first time I saw Akira, it was rented through Scarecrow because you couldn't get Akira.
I didn't get Akira, but I think I got Nausicaa or one of his or Miyazaki's early movies.
Yeah.
Anyway,
But how much time have you spent in Neo Tokyo?
I love Neo Tokyo. I want one of those bikes. In order to survive the collapse of video rental, which is kind of what today's show is about, they went nonprofit.
Right.
Like they're a public radio station and kind of solicit memberships and do pledge drives, and it's kept the store
And what that
open.
means is that you have to give them $50,000 a year to keep the lights on.
Me personally,
Yeah.
Not each donor, although that would be an amazing deal. You get half off rentals if you give them $50,000 a year.
But do people around the world do they mail DVDs and then?
I'm glad
people
you
mail them
asked,
back?
John. Yeah, during COVID, I think when the store was shut, they suddenly realized we need a better model. And there's a Chicago store that had started becoming a rent by mail video rental place because it looked like Netflix was going to get out of that space, which they ended up doing. And Scarecrow now has a very robust website where you can order big chunks of their collection. I think they will not send you the very rarest stuff that
But they can't.
that they have the only copy of on the
They
West
can't
Coast.
dupe
but
it, or is duping it somehow copyright?
That's the
infringing?
problem. That's the problem. They have the first sale doctrine says if they've bought a copy, they can rent it to you, but can they make copies? They cannot.
Even secretly?
Well, if they're secretly making copies, how would we know?
Because you're one of the suits that lives behind the wall.
Well, the problem is if they start secretly making copies and then mailing you their secret copies.
You would recognize a secret copy?
Well,
It's a DVD.
They'd
How
be
do you
breaking the law. This is like
I see. Breaking the law, yeah.
see other people have other concerns beyond who will find out.
Right. The law, of course.
You see a business idea and your first thought is, Who would find out?
Who would? Well, I mean, it's a little bit like if this is a resource and you're sending out a rare movie and some ding dong uses it as a coaster in a suburb of St. Louis and doesn't send it back, and then there's no more Akira.
Not Akira, but yeah, something like that. So that's
Faces of Death 4.
That's the kind of super rare thing where you could go into the store and get it, but they'd put a little hold on your credit card.
Oh yeah.
And that's the good stuff. That's why I go to Scarecrow.
Is that right? The good stuff. You just said that in a like.
I love those holds.
You said it in a voice that suggests that you're watching some blue material.
No, it's just me getting award-winning Canadian hand-drawn animation of the 70s and being like, oh yeah, this isn't on streaming.
You've got a little glass of Diet Dr. Pepper there, and you turn the lights down low.
Bet nobody else is watching this now on planet Earth,
baby.
Anyway, so even if you don't live in the Seattle area, in which case you probably love Scarecrow, you could go to scarecrow.com and you could browse the collection. But they could always use support. But this is a story about the Scarecrow video in another city. Manhattanites will remember Kim's video fondly if they are cinephiles.
And a certain age.
And they have to be the right age.
Yeah.
If you're a Manhattanite under 20, you don't remember Kim's video.
What about under 30?
You could, but you're on the bubble. Because the bottom fell out pretty precipitously from the video rental industry. But it had kind of a sudden start as well. First home video store, what are you going to guess?
When was it, or where was it?
What year?
First home video store, 1982.
It's a little earlier. It's 1977.
That's a lot earlier.
It's almost before it was possible.
Yeah,
that's how early it is. This is that was the brainchild of George Atkinson, who is not the subject of our show, but he's an interesting guy. He was weirdly born in Shanghai to an American father and a Russian mother.
Sure.
In 1935.
Happens all the time.
He's some kind of infiltrator or Empire of the Sun supporting character. He did spend 2 years in a Japanese prison camp.
As you do, but he would have been a little baby. He would have been 10 years old.
He would have been younger. Depending on when he was incarcerated.
As all of our 8-year-old listeners will attest, they're just little babies.
So he was a little Christian Bale running through the camp, annoying all the weird smugglers and expats who were there.
Maybe that's Empire of the Sun is the story of this man.
It's probably the story of the author J.B. Ballard. But sure, let's say it's video store tycoon George Atkinson.
Might be stolen valor. Maybe like that scene in Mad Men. He actually killed him and took his identity. Except they both lived. Well, anyway.
Oh, J.G. Ballard. I think I said J.B. Ballard. See, I got to have somebody mad at me for 11 seconds. And I bet they were happy. But it's over now.
They started to write a letter, and now they have to delete.
Atkinson, I think his family emigrated from post-war China to Canada, as you do. He wound up in L.A., I guess a good-looking kid. He started to get bit parts in movies, and he was maybe a stand-in and a stunt performer. But as you can tell from those 3 job descriptions, his showbiz career wasn't really going anywhere. And like so many people
that besmirches stunt performers have that as their whole career.
That's true. And you can be an extra and do great work. But
being a big star if you're Tom Cruise's stunt double.
Oh boy. Like Tom Cruise's stunt double.
I mean, not big star.
I mean, I think Arnold used the same guy for like 40 years.
Yeah.
That guy, I mean, he doesn't have Schwarzenegger money, but
no.
he has Schwarzenegger employee first tier money.
I know Mike McCready's guitar tech, and that guy he runs a tight ship.
Does he make more than any indie rocker of your acquaintance?
For sure. But he also has like AAA access to everything. You know, he's like Kilroy. He's always there.
He gets the best seats at everything.
Yeah.
But he wanted to stay in the industry. He was in LA. And so he founded a business in the 70s called Home Theater Systems. Mm-hmm. And home theater didn't exist back then. What he was doing was renting you for your party or your pizza parlor or whatever, an 8mm projector and then 12 reels of
stag films.
Probably from a second room, yes. Uh-huh. But I was going to say King Kong or Bride of Frankenstein or something, you know?
Oh, so home theater was not like buy a bunch of expensive equipment. It was really like, I'll come play home movies I'll play movies at your party.
Yeah, and I don't think he was even I don't even know if he included his services. I think it was like you would come into his shop and pick up a projector and for your Christmas party, you could watch It's a Wonderful Life or something else that had fallen into the public domain.
You know, this seems like an old-timey thing, but in 2014, I had the idea of having a film festival in my backyard where I projected movies on my barn.
Yeah.
And I went down to a place by South Center and rented a broadcaster. What are they called?
A projector?
Projector, a digital projector that would actually make a picture big enough to be on the side of the barn from a really nice, weird guy. Took it home, hooked up my computer, and started to play Silver Streak, the Richard Pryor, Gene Wilder hilarious comedy. And it was digitally protected and wouldn't, the computer and the projector wouldn't play it.
It knew that you were trying to...
Yeah, broadcast it in a way that was against the law.
Because, from years of renting VHS, you remember it had that thing at the beginning saying, no public performance of this is allowed.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you rent a UK movie, it's got a funnily specific one about how you can't show this on Air Force installations, oil derricks. There's like a whole list of places that the Queen will specifically come after you if you try to show this movie.
Well, it was super frustrating because I wasn't charging anybody. I had a big party. I had 50 people there. There wasn't any reason why. It's not like I was profiting from it except in goodwill. And Silver Streak is a hilarious adventure. And it ended up I had to play Stir Crazy, the 1980 Gene Wilder, Richard Pryor vehicle.
And it ruined your party.
And it's not as good.
If you had played See No Evil, Hear No Evil, people just would have left.
Yeah. But as it was, we were all sitting out there on blankets watching Stir Crazy. And I was like, look, I'm sorry. Silver Streak was...
I know we all wish this was Silver Streak.
Yeah. And for whatever reason, Stir Crazy wasn't protected, probably because it's not as good.
I think that should have worked. Like today... everybody knows projectors don't care if you're showing it to your TV inside or your wall inside or your friends outside.
But then it was a problem. But it's amazing to think that in 2014 I was still trying to,
solve this problem. So in the mid 70s, he kind of starts to transition over to U-matic, which was those big. It was like a kind of Sony video magnetic tape prototype, the big ones that ended up kind of being used internally by TV stations a lot.
Yeah, we called them VHS-C or something. It was
maybe, I think that's what they still use. Maybe U-matic is the precursor of those, I think. And he ended up opening a storefront on Wilshire, I don't know, kind of the northwestern edge of Sawtell, or maybe it's the southern margins of Brentwood. It's not quite Santa Monica, but somewhere on the west side of LA. He opened a storefront just to rent ways you could watch, because the idea that you could watch a movie at home was crazy back then. You would just wait for a movie to be on TV, and that's the only way that you could see King Kong or Bride of Frankenstein or The Bridge on the River Kwai or whatever it was wait for it to be on TV.
You were right. And be thrilled that it was on TV.
And annoyed by the commercials and the cuts.
Yeah.
But also in the mid-70s...
VHS-C was not what it was called. VHS-C
no, but there is something like that, right?
Yeah.
Or are those the small ones?
VHS-C was the one that went into video cameras.
It was the littler ones?
It was VHS... What was it? It was they were bigger tapes, like you're describing.
Yeah, and I think there's probably still corners of the industry that still use these oversized magnetic tapes. Pretty sure Jeopardy does, actually.
Really?
Which surprised me when I started working there.
Use them for what?
Just like to reach tall things. You stack them up. The shorter contestants are standing on 6 of those.
Lol.
Also, in the mid-70s, that's when the VCR is invented. The idea that you might have an equivalent of this home video, these magnetic tapes that you could actually play at home. And VHS and Betamax are the two competing standards. This could probably be its own omnibus at some point, the format wars.
I mean, I had a Betamax, and let me tell you, it made things more complicated socially.
I chose correctly. Although, Betamax had better picture.
That's what they said.
But I have the retroactive happiness of never having followed the wrong videotape format.
Yeah, I also had an Intellivision. We did not make the right choices.
I was so jealous of the Intellivision. The graphics looked so good. But for our story, all that matters is that George Atkinson starts to think, people are going to have VCRs in their home. And the studios, right at the time, it was only Fox. Fox had decided to release 50 of its older titles on these nascent VHS and Betamax formats. And they thought rich people will spend $100 to own a copy of Butch Cassidy. It's going to be a niche thing, but we'll find 500 rich people that want to own.
Rich people will do anything.
And George Atkinson had the insight. Well, you don't have to. You could just rent these things the same way I've been renting Dracula Meets the Wolfman.
Yeah.
And so he buys. A friend loans him $10,000. He's kind of on the skids. Apparently, he's an alcoholic. He's just been through he's just been through a divorce, and his wife kept the house. It's everything you suspect about the guys who run these little camera repair stores.
Yes,
turns out to be true. So he buys one apiece of the 50 titles that Fox has licensed to this outfit called Magnetic Video, and he buys one copy each on VHS, one on Betamax. So he has a stock of 50 movies in 2 formats each. And he sets them up on his shelves of Wilshire Boulevard and waits to see if anybody will buy a VCR and will then, instead of paying $100 to buy The Sound of Music, will come in and rent it for the night. Maybe they'll buy a membership. And it turns out he is right. It's a huge hit. Video Station, as his store comes to be called, births other video stations in Los Angeles because... to this day, you go to L.A. and you're shocked. Movie theaters are full. Yeah. Movies you've never heard of are playing on big screens at big chains. Like it's still a company town, and everyone there follows pop culture. Comic book stores are full of people who are delighted, who are talking about the new Dune movie and spending $60 on Spider-Man comics that no one else in America is buying.
Yeah, these are the people that spent $2,000 on X-Men #1, and now it's worth $14, but they're like NFT owners.
Now they're spending $2,000 on a statue of the X-Men, and who cares if it appreciates because it looks so bitchin' next to their iguana tank, next to their bearded dragon or whatever. And so there are now video stations all over the city. He
had the smarts, even as a drunk divorcee, to not let somebody else come in and steal this idea, but he was the one franchising all these?
He decided to franchise it, and soon there were 550 video stations nationwide.
Whoa.
Not just video stores, video stations, outposts of his chain.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big player in a booming market. And he's the one who, the studios didn't believe in this rental model, and in fact would put notices on the outsides of these early tapes saying, by the way, you acknowledge that you can't rent or loan this. You can't borrow or lend this thing. And he was the one who stuck to his guns and said, I'm going to let them come after me. I think the Copyright Act of 1976 implies that the first sale doctrine implies that once I've bought this, I'm allowed to rent it out to friends. Or to lend it to friends, or rent it out to customers.
Right.
I'm now the owner of this thing in a way that the copyright holder is not.
Was it a membership thing that he got around it through membership?
I think there was a membership model in place at a lot of these early stores. I think including his, but he thought I have the right to lend this out for $3, whether because I'm the owner of it now. And they would send him nasty grams, and he would consult with a lawyer, and he would stick to his guns and. And
the big studios.
Yeah, and the home theater industry, whatever their industry, the Home Theater Business Owners Association formed out of his legal backbone, basically.
And how long before the other studios started also putting their movies on VHS?
It was pretty quick. I remember, my personal autobiography says that by 83, every studio...
By 83, Ken Jennings was watching movies across... all of Hollywood.
My parents owned 3 movies, if I remember right.
Empire of the Sun.
No.
Out of Africa.
They're not good. And it's too early for either of those. It was Star Wars, because Fox was an early adopter. You could get Star Wars, but not Empire Jedi for a long time. You could get... they also had a Richard Dreyfuss piano romance called The Competition.
Okay.
If you've ever wanted to see Richard Dreyfuss and Amy Irving. Show that on your barn, John. And
that should be a new catchphrase. Show that on your barn.
Every time
John.
we mention a bad movie or TV show, we should remember that. And then the third one was a Malcolm McDowell narrated documentary about the Beatles.
Whoa.
That is pretty good and now impossible to find because like Paul McCartney had it buried after the Beatles' own anthology came out in the 90s.
Whoa.
So they probably should have kept one of these three movies. It's probably the only VHS tape around that has any resale value.
Malcolm McDowell, it's like Caligula narrating.
Your two interests have come together.
I'm like, what is happening here? So how many times have you seen Star Wars?
As a result of, so the movies we had as kids, I have seen 30 times. Mary Poppins, Star Wars, Tron,
Yeah.
What's Up, Doc?
Many
Many of the Star Trek movies, all the bad 80s sci-fi, Last Starfighter.
And you had these in Korea.
Yeah, we didn't have broadcast TV. So it was like even more essential that we have a wall full of, and this really colored, I think, my parents' experience. My mom, well into the late 90s, was avidly home taping stuff off of TCM and other cable channels because
Home taping is killing music.
it's killing TCM. Like the kids are not watching Gilda because they can just go to my mom and say, hey, do you have that VHS of Gilda you recorded off TCM in 1997?
Wow. Did she stop between commercials?
Well, that was the thing about a lot of these cable channels. No commercials.
Oh, cable, right. Okay.
But yeah, there were people, something would come on and they would home tape it and they would hit pause in commercial. So you'd see a second of a Dairy Queen ad and then it would go bzzz.
Yeah.
And then Silent Running with Bruce Dern would start again.
That used to happen all the time. That's such a familiar sensation of like
the slight roll and the tracking problem.
Yeah. And
because someone tried to pause a commercial.
Like, special orders, don't upset us.
But yeah, that whole industry exists because of him. And, Blockbuster soon became the dominant player in the space, mostly by over-leveraging themselves financially to buy up competitors, which was one of the many things that led to their downfall. I think it was, by 2005, this was a huge industry. There were 24,000 stores nationwide renting 2.6 billion movies a year. It was an $8 billion industry. And that was pretty close to the peak. There were 9,000 Blockbuster videos.
In 2001?
No, around 2005.
Oh, 2005? That seems really late.
I mean, there's a lag, right?
Sure.
Because DVD is 5 years old or whatever at that point, 7 to 8 years old at that point. But there's always a lag. People are still subscribing to newspapers right now. It won't be true in 6 weeks. But
you're talking about now or in 2005?
No, I mean now.
Oh, now. You think 6 weeks from now it will be the last newspaper subscription?
All those people have to be in their 90s. How many of those people are making summer plans?
I definitely stop by the newspaper rack at the grocery store on my way out the door, and I look at it, and I get that wave of like, I just want to read a newspaper.
It's so thin.
And then it's so thin, and then I look at the price, which is, I don't know how.
$6.
Yeah, it's like, what the? A newspaper should be 50 cents.
And this newspaper
that's the new price.
How is this newspaper $2, $3? What does the Seattle Times cost?
It's a lot of money. More than, I think it's $2.50 just for the daily paper. Man. And it used to be 50 cents and 3 times as big.
Yep. And you're right. 50 cents was the bad price because USA Today was 50 cents and then a lot of places could go up from a quarter.
Yeah, it was a quarter for half my life.
Blockbuster made a lot of their money on late fees, it turns out, in hindsight. They were kind of gouging their customers. They were not a profitable business unless they could charge late fees.
Oh, lame.
And that turned out to be their hubristic downfall because famously, there was a guy who, let's tell it the Paul Harvey way. There was a guy who had a $40 late charge on his Blockbuster rental of Apollo 13 that he had forgotten to return before he went on vacation. And he could not talk them out of it. And he was like, what if this was a mail order business? And he became the founder of Netflix.
Really?
Yeah.
Like a scofflaw.
If some guy, scofflaw,
jerk.
What do you mean? Because he forgot to return Apollo 13?
Yeah. What kind of a lawbreaker is he?
If the kid behind the counter had been like, oh, no, I get it, man. Like, I go out of town sometimes too. Yeah, don't worry about it. We'll take it off your account. Maybe Netflix never happens.
But that's how Blockbuster was making their cash.
That was the only way they were making their cash.
Oh, wow.
And so, spoiler warning.
Is that what we say? Spoiler warning?
Yeah.
Is that the coinage?
What would you say?
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
That seems a little more aggro than mine. Mine's like, hey, Here's the gentle warning. Yours is like,
Yeah, that's right, because people that don't want things spoiled are really upset.
Okay.
It's like,
But this was an ironic one.
oh, okay, spoiler warning.
No, I'll still do it. Spoiler alert. People soon found it was very profitable not to own a brick and mortar store, but to sell you DVDs and videotapes through the mail. Or through a little ATM-like contraption.
When did they start with those outside of supermarkets?
About the same time. Netflix and Redbox started at about the same time. And Blockbuster was full of still hubris and braggadocio and kind of laughed at the idea that anybody could challenge their supremacy. The famous story, in 2000, the founder of Netflix came to them and offered to sell them Netflix for $50 million.
Offered to sell
Netflix to Blockbuster. It would be their mail order arm.
Right.
And they were like, $50 million? We'll just start up our own and we'll kill you because we are Blockbuster. And of course, today Netflix, that $50 million company, is a multi-billion-dollar business, one of the biggest in showbiz. And Blockbuster collapsed.
It's so funny that Redbox and Netflix were both in the same space at the same time, but one of them had net in their name and one of them had box in their name. And which one is going to survive, right? If you tie your name to a box, you're dead in the water.
Just so you know, and we don't get sued, there are still red boxes.
Oh.
Outside many
is that what those are?
I bet your local convenience store or grocery store has one.
The QFC has one, but I just assumed it was Netflix.
And you don't have a DVD player, so you don't care. Or
people still go and rent DVDs, is what you're saying, out in front of the QFC.
Yeah, because, a movie for a while there was a window where it would get to there before streaming, although that's now a little dicey. And I don't know, maybe the idea is I don't want to pay Hulu $10 a month, but I do want to see this one movie and there's no other streaming way to see it. But
I understand that.
But there is a
feeling.
disc.
I wonder if they have Cocoon.
They don't have Cocoon, unless it's like German Redbox, right. Unless it's Boxerosa or whatever the German for Redbox is. Wait,
it's probably not Boxerosa.
Rotkraten. So it's hard to find numbers on just how fast video rental collapsed in the first decade of this millennium.
Because it waited until 2010, is that? Or no, it started in 2005.
What did? The decline?
The decline and collapse of video.
The peak was right around then. 03 to 05, maybe? Something like that. But you look at Blockbuster's earnings reports over that period, and there are quarters where they are down 18% store to store.
And they were already losing money?
And they were already kind of in trouble. Viacom had bought them, but their business model didn't make a ton of sense.
Oh, Viacom bought them?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well,
that's
shed a tear for old Viacom.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's tragic that Florida sports owner Wayne Huizenga can no longer afford, every boat that he wanted or whatever. I'm sure he didn't skip any meals. But Redbox and Netflix were eating their lunch, and you can just see you can't survive losing 20% of your business in a single quarter every quarter.
No. Well, no. I mean, I'm no MBA.
You're going to say it would take 5 quarters to get to zero, but that's not true.
No, that's not true.
Because it's Zeno's paradox.
That's right. It goes forever into zero.
That's why there's still one Blockbuster in Bend, although...
There is.
Is there still?
I think there is still one.
And maybe there were some... Because those were the non-corporately owned ones. A few stubborn franchises remained in Alaska and Bend, places where maybe a little harder to stream movies.
Well, anymore, Bend is, it's as popular as Vail at the time.
But Alaska is not.
Wahoo! Alaska's still not as popular as Vail. There are more people in Alaska than in Vail.
But it's close.
Rating the popularity, I think. So
the total IQ is the same.
Ooh,
oh, no.
Come on.
That's mean.
Boo. There
Punching
are a lot of
down.
Smart people in Alaska.
Punching down. And a lot of dumb people in Vail. I mean, think what all that weed does to your IQ.
No, it's not just the weed; it's all the MBAs.
I was going to say the altitude, but you're not wrong.
Were you? You must have been an early Redbox adopter. You were standing out in front of the grocery store in the cold rain, trying to rent Dumb and Dumber.
I was still going to Scarecrow as a proud Seattleite.
Oh,
but my brother, who's an omnibus listener, lived in a city that maybe did not have an amazing video store.
Are you talking about down by South Lake Union?
Yeah, that's what I mean. He lived in Salt Lake Union. No, he lived in Salt Lake City, which, had some, I remember renting some good independent video stores there, but he was very reliant on mail order Netflix. He was an early adopter and one of the last subscribers that I knew of mail order Netflix. They always had a stack of things to watch. But every city had a Scarecrow. Every big city that was a cultural center had
an alternative video.
The great independent video store that, Blockbuster took over by having a cool barcode system that let them stock more movies than your little mom and pop video station could. But it still meant they had no more than 10,000 videos in the store, and usually less because that included, 78 copies of Matrix Reloaded.
Right. 60 of Three Men and a Baby.
And, but these stores would have the weird stuff. It's not just they would have more videos. It was like they wouldn't throw away their, the old Humphrey Bogart movie or the unsubtitled Turkish movie that might get one rental a year or 0 rentals a year at a Blockbuster.
How did they have the space to store it all?
Movies are surprisingly compact. Scarecrow still has that old building, and they've got 147,000 movies.
Do they really?
And they've moved some stuff into envelopes.
Yeah.
The documentary section that was exploding. Now they still have their 60,000 baseball documentaries or whatever, but they all fit in like 2 file folders now, It helped that DVDs were thinner than VHS, which were themselves at least smaller in height than Laserdisc.
If you go into Scarecrow and you say, I'm looking for that documentary about people that sharpen their teeth, does the kid behind the counter have to wander off into the back like they used to and kind of you hear boxes being rifled through, or is it all pretty systematized?
Well, in almost all these places, the discs were never out in the front of the store.
Yeah,
so you'd bring up the box and they'd have to find the disc. But these places did have great curated knowledge so that, you'd have a bunch of film nerds who were probably, they could have been knowledgeable to the point of being dicks, but like they would absolutely be like, I'll tell you what you're looking for. And also, I'll tell you the better version of that movie is this one from 1967. And for a certain kind of person, that's annoying. But for the kind of clientele they want, it's catnip,
Right.
Like you go into Scarecrow and they will always be showing something on the screen, probably in honor of somebody whose birthday was that day.
Uh-huh.
But it's never going to be like, it's Harrison Ford's birthday and we're showing the new Indiana Jones. It'll always be like, it's Jacqueline Smith's birthday. Here's a TV movie about the Kennedys from 1978 that we still have on VHS because it's badass and there's no way to replace it.
And Jacqueline Smith plays Jackie O.
I think that's a real thing. I was just making something up, but I think that is a real thing. So every city had one of these, and in many cases there has been one survivor. It's Vidiot's in L.A. and in Portland it's called what's it called? Movie Madness. Seattle still has the granddaddy of them all, Scarecrow. If you're a New York Cityite, which I think is what they say.
Yeah, that's the phrase, New York Cityite.
Spoiler warning, I'm a New York Cityite. I'm like, this is like if AI wrote Omnibus
script.
It was Kim's Video. Do you have any memory of going to any of Kim's places? The big one,
I definitely remember the name.
Big one was East Village, but they were probably 5 or 6 at its peak.
I remember them, and I can picture them, but I don't. I think by that point in time, when I was living in New York, I was not renting movies. That was not my dating strategy there.
Nobody there has a dating strategy. That's why they're shopping.
That's what it was. My dating strategy was, hey, I don't have a place to stay tonight.
That's why they're getting weird European sexploitation movies at Kim's Video.
Oh my God, I just found a picture of Jacqueline Smith as Jackie O. She looks nothing like Jackie O.
Who looks like Jackie
O? Well, even her hair looks like Mary Lou Retton.
On paper, it's okay. Oh, then you can tell the era they made it because it'll inaccurately reflect the late 50s. So Kim's Video was named not for a woman named Kim, but for a guy surnamed Kim Young Man.
Oh. I would not have guessed.
He came to this country as a young man, but he was a slightly older man in the 80s where most of our story takes place, or I guess, and then into the 2000s when it ends. He was born near Kunsan Air Force Base in South Korea in the 60s. Grew up in the 60s.
Okay.
Kunsan, I think, when I was there a little bit later, Kunsan was big, but it was like the second biggest Air Force base after Osan, which is a little closer to Seoul. Kunsan was further south, but somehow he befriended the wife of a pilot who showed him movies at a time when a kid in fairly rural Korea had no way to see a movie. And she had, for some reason, they had 8mm stuff, and she could show him like a silent Charlie Chaplin movie. So he saw silent movies on 8mm, and his little eyes turned into stars, and he fell in love with film at a young age. And so later, when he emigrated to the U.S. and opened a dry cleaning place on Avenue A in Manhattan, he added a little video rental corner. This was the mid '80s, and this was catching on. And a lot of little Manhattan shops and bodegas would have video rental corners.
Sure, I remember. Always a little side hustle.
Yeah, even as a kid in South Korea, we'd get a pizza, and the pizza place would have a video rental thing in the corner. Yeah. Grocery stores had them, everywhere had them. And but for him, this was a passion project to the degree that in 1987 he decided to open his own video rental store nearby, I think maybe also on Avenue A. He got to a point where he had 8,000 videos, like a big, blockbuster-sized collection, and he hired employees that were just as passionate about movies as he was. To the degree, and these were kind of the, haughty know-it-all clerks you're imagining.
Sure, I've been to a lot of record stores in New York City, and I know exactly who you're talking about.
This is the same kind of person, but cinephile nerds, and a lot of them actually turned it into careers. Alex Ross Perry later became the indie director of Listen Up, Philip, and the Elizabeth Moss movie about an insufferable punk star. You would like this movie. You think punk rockers are insufferable fakes.
Mm-hmm.
What's it called? Her Smell. It's good. Dylan Kidd, who directed Roger Dodger, worked there. Todd Phillips, most famously, directed the Hangover movies and Joker.
Right.
He worked behind the counter there. And
Did
a lot
you
of
see
musicians.
Joker?
I did see Joker.
And?
I like Joker, actually.
Okay, all right, good.
Why? Do you have Joker takes?
I got no Joker takes.
It reminded me of King of Comedy.
Which
is, it's...
And De Niro's in both.
Yeah, that's kind of the gag, is that this time he's the host and not the kook. I think Joker works.
Okay, all right. Well, I never
it's kind of a bummer that to get that kind of a psycho drama greenlit, you have to make it a Batman tie-in.
Yeah, that's the thing. I felt like we already had the definitive Joker movie. Why do we have this one?
Are you thinking of Jack Nicholson?
Yeah, that's right. No, not Jack Nicholson. The portrayal of the Joker by late lamented actor
from the Southern Hemisphere, whom you love,
Mr. Guy from Brokeback Mountain.
Yes,
who died tragically and too young.
And because you and I both know his name, we don't even have to say it.
We don't even have to say who he is. He's just he's a famous actor that we love.
It really goes without saying, in my opinion. His name in particular.
Yes.
His most famous movies we should mention.
Yes, but we do not need to mention his name because we both know it, as everyone does. And it's not Christian Bale. But that movie...
I'm so mean.
He was amazing in that movie. He's good.
He's good.
And so why do we need another Joker with Shia LaBeouf or whatever?
It was not Shia LaBeouf.
Okay. But yeah, so, and now I'm seeing what you're saying, which is it should have just been like a movie about a nut.
But nobody will greenlight that movie.
But nobody will greenlight a movie about a nut anymore. I bet if I went to Scarecrow, the guy behind the counter would be like, you know what, the better version of this movie is a movie about an actual nut.
He'll give you the Cesar Romero Joker from the 1966 Batman movie.
Pow!
There were actually some future music stars that worked in that store. Albert Hammond Jr.
Sure.
Of future Nepo Baby, of the Nepo Baby band we can't think of.
Super hipster. No, but I know the guy that Gordon, who produced that record. I know Gordon. Okay. Yeah. He and I, he lived in a house where I had a band that practiced in the living room of the house.
He lived in Seattle?
Gordon? Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He was in Sky Cries Mary.
Oh, that's funny. I had never made that connection to the first
You're kidding.
Strokes record. And Andrew W.K. lived there. Party rock anthem god, Andrew W.K.
Now, he's a nice guy.
Do you know him?
I had the occasion to meet him one time, and he's exactly the sweetheart that you think he's going to be.
Aw.
And
more like Andrew XO, am I right?
Everybody I know that knows him better than I do says he's the greatest. Just the greatest guy. Andrew WK.
How could you make that kind of peppy pick me up music and not be?
And not be the greatest? Well, you could be cynical about it.
I guess. I actually kind of like those songs. Is that bad?
No, they're amazing. They're amazing.
Quentin Tarantino never worked there, but he had a membership. He used to go in all the time. There's a famous story of him, even after he directed Pulp Fiction, of not being able to rent there because he'd forgotten his card. And they were like, "Oh, yeah, Mr. Tarantino, I'm sorry, we have a rule." He thanked them in the Kill Bill credits. It was very formative in his film history.
He lived in New York? I didn't know that about Quentin Tarantino.
Well, it may have been... He came to Scarecrow quite a bit when he would be in town, so it may have just been a visit. But I think he lived in New York.
David Lee Roth famously was a EMT in New York.
Oh, right.
And I think there was some story about him having like 700 overdue video rental. Like he would just go to maybe Kim's, rent movies, and then just never take them back. And he had I guess, a pretty great library of. He should have started Netflix, this guy.
That's great. David Lee Roth could have started Netflix.
That's what I'm saying.
Imagine how the world would have been different.
If David Lee Roth was right now,
what would it be called?
$500 billion.
It wouldn't be called Blockbuster. It would be called Bop-de Bop Zippy Bop Video. By the 90s, there were a bunch of Kim's Videos. The flagship store was the one just a little bit west of the original Avenue A location in on St. Mark's Place in the East Village.
You know what? That's the one I remember.
And it was called Mondo Kim's, in a nod to Mondo Cane, the movie that's been its own omnibus entry. 5-story building that he owned. The third story was the largest movie collection on the East Coast, pretty much. There was kind of a dimly lit basement that he talked about turning into a movie dungeon, where you would get some of these movie crazy people and just lock them. First you'd kill them. No, you'd lock them in with a bunch of their favorite movies. He thought people would pay for this. And of all the collapsing video stores in America, Kim's Video probably has the best one. Scarecrow has an inspiring one of a community coming together to keep it alive, but Kim's has an irresistibly bizarre video collapse story. It's kind of a funny story, even when times are high. Like in 2005, there was an FBI sting at the store because they had so much, I don't want to say pirated, but, unofficial, unlicensed things that they were renting.
Really?
That perhaps
the feds got involved.
The vagaries of copyright law would not allow.
All the other things the FBI could be doing.
And they're confiscating Todd Haynes' movie Superstar to keep Mattel from suing. Kim finally Mr. Kim got to finally exercise his love of silent film that had been instilled in him as a child. He directed a nearly silent movie about the friendship between a Buddhist monk and a streetwalker, like a sex worker in his neighborhood.
Sure.
Called 1/3, which he could not get anybody to, he made on his own dime, couldn't get anybody to show. I think booked film for him and, exhibited it on his own dime. Anyway, a real enthusiast.
This seems like the kind of movie you would have seen. Have you seen his documentary about a Buddhist monk and a sex worker?
I'm going to look and see if Scarecrow owns 1/3, which is Kim Young-man's. It may not even be commercially available, in which case it's not Scarecrow's fault that they don't have it.
I don't know about that.
But they do.
Yes.
1/3, 2006. That's got to be it.
Now, are you going to rent it, or did you just put it on your list?
Well, anybody listening to this could rent it by mail. There's a little rent by mail button here. I could wander into Scarecrow and grab it today, and then you can't rent it, listeners. I could sit on it for years, like David Lee Roth.
Burn.
What if that became the thing that David Lee Roth was most famous for? Bad video renter.
What if I do an episode on David Lee Roth's post Van Halen careers?
I bet Sammy Hagar is the most attentive video renter, and right?
He does seem like that, doesn't he?
Yeah, he would. He's probably down in Cabo kicking it, but like when he comes back to the States for a week, he sensibly rents one movie and then returns it to Redbox well within the rental period.
The first thing that comes up when you Google David Lee Roth video rentals.
What is it, John? I'm on the edge of my seat.
How much does it cost to hire David Lee Roth?
See, AI broke Google. AI broke Google.
Yeah.
Google used to just would have. It used to would have found you a page.
Used to just would have found it.
It would have found you some article from the Village Voice or the Portland Weekly 20 years ago that had David Lee Roth and video rental in close proximity, and now it's just trying to guess what you want. And the algorithm's trying to produce content tailored to what they think Google is going to guess you want.
And the answer is $300,000 to rent David Lee Roth. I'm assuming that means to have him play a concert, but what if you just rented him?
Yeah, like what if he has to do everything you say? Like he has to bring you drinks.
Hey, Dave, I'm just going out on a cruise today, and I'd like to rent you.
Hey, Dave, would you watch my plants?
No one else is going to be on the cruise. It's just you and me. And then it says, how much does it cost to rent Adam Sandler?
Wait, why is that the next thing?
I don't know. And apparently Adam Sandler you can get for $200,000 a month.
It looks like
an instance.
I don't believe either of these numbers. It's like when you look up celebrity net worths.
Oh, how much does it cost to rent Johnny Depp?
I have just discovered who the new audience is for Google's bad broken search results, and it's you.
It's me.
You're so happy about this.
Danny DeVito you can get cheaper, but Tom Cruise is $1 million.
By the fall of 2008, the writing is on the wall for video rental. 1,000 blockbusters are closing a year.
Now I remember this as a period where people were talking about blockbusters closing all
right, like all the ex-blockbusters.
Oh no, what's going to happen?
And it was maybe not a tragedy. It's bad for the employees, but it didn't hurt American communities that you couldn't get. You couldn't find a wall full of 70 copies of Kung Fu Panda. But for these irreplaceable archives like Scarecrow or Kim's, it was a hard time. And Kim really as a movie lover, he wanted to keep his archive together. So in September of 2008, he posts puts it in the store or puts it on his store's Patreon or whatever existed back then, the following offer. Like, I want to give away all 55,000 of my movies, the complete Kim's video archive.
Whoa.
I need to find a new home for it. You can have it all for nothing.
Whoa.
The problem is, and there's 3 big buts. Kind of like
he couldn't lie.
Kind of like the lead singers of Van Halen. One, you have to accept the whole thing. You can't just be like, I just want the good rare stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I do not want 11 copies of Shrek 2.
Okay.
You had to have 3,000 square feet to, store and shelve the whole thing.
Sure.
And you had to keep, in perpetuity, you had to keep access to all of Kim's Video's current members. So you had to keep access to the collection open. You couldn't just, keep them in your basement.
Oh.
Or even in an unindexed, university cold storage room somewhere. You had to guarantee access. Interesting. And that turned out to be the rub for a lot of, because NYU wanted them, Cooper Union wanted them, apparently Columbia was interested, any of the store's employees.
But they just wanted to put them in a basement somewhere and say they had them.
Yeah, they just wanted to say, well, what do we not have and what can we, can we throw away all these Will Ferrell movies? How many copies of Bruce Almighty does Cooper Union really need? Right. Some would argue 0.
And we don't want anybody really to be able to come in and get these things. We want to.
Yeah, that would be more annoying that you have to, for manpower, you have to keep maintaining customer service for a different business's weirdo film nerd clients from the 90s. Even though Kim says he got 30 inquiries, really the only solid offer came from an ocean away. A grad student, kind of an itinerant sociology grad student named Glenn Hyman, was a fan of Kim's and had read the notice that the collection was going away and, shed a tear, as many of us were at that time, for the passing of an era. But he was about to leave for Italy. And while he was in Italy, he planned to have dinner with a friend of a friend. You don't have to memorize the names of these people. It's going to turn into a weird game of telephone.
How long before a count is involved?
We are going to have a dawn. Okay. Does that count as a count?
Oh, we'll let it slide.
How about fashion royalty? He decides to have dinner with a Venice graphic designer named Franca Paoli while he's there, a friend of a friend. And by chance, Franca Paoli has just read an article in La Repubblica about the Sicilian town of Salemi.
Yeah.
Salemi is an ancient city.
But this is one of those towns where nobody was living there anymore, and they were like, come.
It was the classic thing where they were saying, for €1, you can have a villa here, but within 2 years, you've got to have it fixed up, and you've got to have it up to code, and they don't have gas and water. And you've read about these stories, right?
And also, the town is controlled by the mafia, and you're going to be the only one with any money.
It is Western Sicily, so you have correctly predicted one element of the story. That's right. So apparently, do you know Southern Italy at all? Have you ever walked across Sicily, John?
I have never been to Sicily. I've been, to Brindisi, which I think is maybe on the border of Southern Italy, but doesn't really count. It's just it's basically a starport on the edge of a defunct system.
A wretched hive of scum and villainy or whatever?
Brindisi's pretty bad. But no, I've never been south of Italy on the west coast. I'm sorry, south of Rome on the west coast. Have you?
No. Actually, I've never even been to Naples, although apparently it has kind of a rugged charm.
It's amazing. And, there's a big volcano right there to look at
which probably leads to their lackadaisical approach to law and order, you know? Like, if there's a volcano right there that literally might lava flow you anytime,
whatever.
Who cares if you don't have a legitimate business or if you need to give a third of your shop's income to a local fixer?
But I did watch that documentary series where the actor goes back to Italy and eats a bunch of spaghetti.
Would you say that actor is? We all know his name, the balding star of.
Yeah, he's Italian extract. And loves carbonara and tries to tell stories about Italy.
What kind of Italian last name would you guess that he had if you had to guess that actor's last name?
I would say it was from the north, like a Milanese last name.
Like, give me a vibe. Like, this guy's name might be
Iccitori or Chamoramba.
Robert Iccitori.
Yeah, well, that sounds Japanese. Robert Iccitori.
You think Chumbawamba sounds Italian?
His name was Ian McKellen.
Yeah.
No, it was Augie.
You haven't even said there we go.
Esposito?
No, I mean it's a potentially Mediterranean name, which is better than you had done in your first 4 attempts at naming an Italian.
Yeah, it was Gino Capicelli.
Yes, Gino Capicelli for CNN returns to Italy and tastes his way through.
Yeah, that's right.
Amazing antipasti.
He's very fashionable, and I think diminutive and fashionable.
I love this new version of the show where you just say things you know about actors you can't name.
He doesn't feature his wife in the show, except later on. I punched out of the show after a while just because I felt like the storytelling was close, but no cigarillo.
As we say in Sicily. Apparently, to those who have been there, rural Sicily is full of just these beautiful, quaint little towns, little citadels up on high ground, little fortresses. So there's still cobblestone streets and a nice cafe and a bar surrounding a nice central piazza with an old church.
Yeah, girls sitting in alphas going Monday, Tuesday, Thursday.
Vespas zipping up and down winding streets. Apparently Sicily is chock-a-block with these, and salami is not one of them.
Oh, boo.
Apparently it is not particularly attractive to the eye. It's kind of dead. Historically, it's important. It's the first place Garibaldi unveiled today the Italian tricolor red, white, and green flag, apparently.
Right.
But since then, hard times. And 1968, there was an earthquake that kind of flattened the town, and that kind of did it for salami. But in the early 2000s, Franca Paoli read in La Repubblica, in case you forgot the framing of this.
You could buy the whole town.
In case you forgot the framing here while John was failing to name Stanley Tucci.
Tucci, right.
Tucci!
200 lira, you could buy the whole town.
For a single euro.
What year was this?
This is 2008.
Oh, okay. So euros would have been the currency.
It is indeed a single euro.
It isn't really. A single euro?
For a single euro, you could buy a villa in Salemi. You couldn't buy the whole town, but you could have your pick of any vacant place there, and you just had to commit to fixing it up in 2 years.
Well, when you say you couldn't buy the whole town, it seems like if you had 10 to 12 euro, you
could buy the whole town.
Yeah, right.
Sorry, I don't mean for that price.
I see.
But yes, for a fairly nominal price, you could own Salemi, Italy.
Yeah, for 200 euro.
But there was some new blood trying to turn the place around. The new mayor of Salemi at the time was a leftist, like a former anarchist guy and an art critic, a guy from the art scene named Vittorio Scarbi. He had been elected mayor, and he had a connection with a guy named Oliviero Toscani, a famous Italian photographer who had you're doing a funny nod, but
these are all great Italian names that I could have resorted to.
He found a guy named Ken Ichimoto, who was not Japanese, who was not Italian.
Right? Sounds pretty Italian, though.
Oliviero Toscani, you will know his work because he did all those kind of edgy Benetton ads that had like AIDS patients or death row inmates.
At the time, it was pretty rad still to see people of different ethnicities in a single ad.
This is a fashion ad, but it has a black person and an Asian.
Well, and it's a black person from Africa.
Like a very black person.
Yeah, so you're like, wow, I want to buy these sweaters.
And let's face it, when we were reading Rolling Stone at the time, we were not saying Asian. We would have said there was an Oriental in the magazine.
Maybe you would have. That was pretty advanced.
I was in Asia. I was not doing that crap.
No, that's right.
So Oliviero Toscani becomes his alderman of creativity, kind of his arts consultant.
He appoints him this?
Would you like to be Seattle's alderman of creativity?
Oh, wait. Appoints her or him?
Him.
Oliviero. You know what? I'm looking for a job, and I think alderman of creativity would be a pretty good county-wide job.
Just make it your social media bio. You can appoint yourself the alderman of creativity.
My social media bio right now is my eBay store.
So Francopoli, knowing that this town has had this rebirth and space is so incredibly cheap there that the problem with a 55,000 video collection is it's incredibly expensive to store that in the 5 boroughs of Manhattan.
And ship it from Manhattan to Italy.
Plus all the shipping.
Expensive.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is storage space is expensive near Kim's Video, could not be cheaper in Salemi, Sicily. And Francopoli, having seen that, hears Glenn Hyman bemoaning the fact that this collection is to be gone forever. And she says, well, where is throwing a ton of money at the arts right now is this town in Salemi. Like, they've promised all these initiatives. And so she puts Kim's Video, Mr. Kim, in touch with the new mayor of Salemi and his new consigliere, this photographer guy. And suddenly it's a done deal. And it gets announced that Kim's Video, the entire collection, is moving to this tiny, nothing town in Sicily.
What?
Because they're going to build a whole new... Here's what they did. They put together this glossy brochure, like a magazine, and they sent it to Mr. Kim full of promises of how, by January 2009, we'll have a new website up so that everybody can mail order these videos. And we're going to open the Centro Kim. In fact, that will be that's where our film festival will be. And this archive will be the cornerstone of our new film industry, our new arts phase.
This went from being an omnibus episode to being an omnibus episode.
It got crazy. And this is and employees. All the employees are horrified that these videos are just going to go to Sicily and disappear.
But
they're trying to get together a co-op to buy the movies, but they don't have the money.
Sure.
And in the end, Mr. Kim is so wowed by the idea of the Centro Kim in this new arts town in Sicily, in Italy, that he agrees to the deal. And
my question is, where was Susan Sarandon in all of this? Like, where are all these New York film actors?
Come on, Tarantino.
Yeah, well, where's De Niro? He's down in De
Niro's right next door in Tribeca.
Yeah, exactly. Like, walk up, throw a couple of $1 million at Kim and keep the thing alive.
David Lee Roth, throw the money you get at one $300,000 appearance for the Sultan of Oman or the dictator of Tajikistan.
Yeah.
And buy Kim's Video, and then you can have the videos as long as you want.
People in New York are always bitching and moaning about the Strand and how the Romanian Cultural Center is closing and everything's changing and blah, blah, blah. And they let Kim's go without even a peep.
For the cost of one of their fancy Manhattan dinners, they could have kept Kim's alive for another 3 months.
Like you said, yes.
So I think there's not a lot of money. There's a glossy brochure that costs $77 at Kinko's, but except for that, this is all kind of vaporware. Francopoli's husband actually pays for whatever the shipping is across the Atlantic, and even I think he goes to New York and packs up the videos himself.
What?
To get the stuff to someone. So a shipping container crosses the Atlantic full of the third season of Family Ties on VHS and weird Eastern European sexploitation movies and samurai movies and all the rest. And it gets loaded onto a flatbed truck, and they drive it out to this town, only to find that the narrow, winding roads of Salemi, you can't get a shipping container flatbed truck up.
So they have to park it at the edge of town?
They unload it into smaller vehicles, and those vehicles head up the hill, and then those can't get all the way to the Centro Kim or wherever they're going to unload this stuff. So they end up unpacking them by hand and carrying Kim's video, a plastic IKEA basket at a time into Salemi, Italy.
Is young Vito Corleone underneath the videos in one of the baskets?
I think he's lounging under a tree. It's Sicily Michael is lounging under a tree watching these guys carry the stuff on donkeys up the hill.
Yeah, that's the thing. They couldn't get into the town with the truck because there's two guys with a donkey cart saying, "Bring out the kid."
He's laughing with no, I can't do it. Alessandra. No, it's long.
No, it's a
long Italian woman's name. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday.
Alexandriana.
It's Alexandriana. That is correct. And after this, so the videos get to Salemi. There's like a 10-second unboxing video that the LA Times puts up. Hey, the shipping container is here. And then there are years of radio silence.
Oh no!
Kim's video, Italian style, disappears from the world.
Boo.
And there's actually no update until 2012. Journalist Karina Longworth comes to Salemi. This is, I think, before she was like the Karina. She's now a pretty famous podcaster of Hollywood history. She's married to director Ryan Johnson. At the time, she's writing for The Village Voice and freelance. I think she comes to Salemi just to try to figure out what happened to Kim's video, and she finds out that things are looking pretty dire.
Is that young hipster still mayor of the town, or has he moved on?
Everybody's gone. Toscani, the Benetton photographer, told her that really his whole idea was that he could get all this stuff and just start streaming it around the world, and it would be a moneymaker and fund his other art stuff, and did not seem concerned the fact that this would not be legal under any kind of copyright law.
Right.
And when he was told that, he kind of took his lunch and he went home. He took his ball and left and got out of the revived Salemi movement. The mayor had resigned because it turns out when you suddenly become politically powerful in Western Sicily, it's because you had connections.
Oh.
In his case, it was a guy named Pino Giammarino. An organized crime guy from way back, had paid for the, what was our mayor's name? The Vittorio Scarbi Renaissance of Salemi.
It seems like Pino Gianardino, what was it?
Giammarino?
Pino Giammarino seems like an exclamation instead of swearing. Like you like to say
Pino
things.
Giammarino.
Pino Giammarino. Try showing that on your barn.
I was at dinner last night and met a friend of a friend I didn't know, and he was what is it? Anesthetist, I think.
Anesthesiologist.
He's not an anesthesiologist though. He's actually the professional he's the tech who administers the anesthesia.
Oh, I see. So the anesthesiologist just has a conductor's baton and stands back and says,
"That guy's getting more." I think you save money by not getting the anesthesiologist in. Your insurance will only pay for
an anesthetist?
a certified nurse anesthetist or something.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Anyway, but these guys make great livings, and so he's a guy. He lives in Seattle now.
Seems like if you're going to save money on a thing, anesthesiology is not where you're going to want to cut corners.
That's not how the healthcare industry thinks, though. That's how the patient thinks. But he had this delightful habit. He's an African-American guy, delightful habit of deploying four-letter words in the way you would expect people, like the rhythms that you would expect to hear from a comedian or a musician. But he would do so but because maybe he works in healthcare, he was so well trained to say shoot and flip and darn that you had all the rhythms that you would expect. You were all ready to hear like a colorful profanity, and then he would say flip and shoot and set, and it was delightful.
This was your dinner companion.
Yeah.
This is not part of the story. This is just your friend's friend.
But this is, and I'm going to start doing this because
Pino Giammarino.
So the mayor got run out of office when his organized crime connections became public.
But what a weird Tony Soprano turn where he's trying to basically make...
he's trying to start an Iranian film festival.
Yeah, he's trying to make the movie Saw or whatever. And it turns out he's a mafia scion.
So Karina Longworth is reporting this, and Toscani is telling her, yeah, this is terrible. The movies are just rotting. They're sitting in mouse droppings in some basement. This was all a scam. But apparently that's not quite true. Franca Paoli had gotten the government in Rome to chip in some money and say, look, we for this we got this amazing film collection. If we could just get this building up to code. So Karina Longworth gets there and is unable to find anybody in the street, anybody out and about. Everything's shut down. It's basically a ghost town. But after spending a couple days there, she realizes that down the hill, government money has in fact got the Centro Kim up to code and has hired an intern to start indexing and scanning the collection.
So not in the town, down at the bottom of the mountain.
I guess after the earthquake, a lot of people moved to the bottom of the hill. And so maybe if they were like getting donkeys to get the movies up to the top of the hill, it turned out to be all for naught because they just had to go back down when the Centro Kim opened. But the movies were all there in pretty good order. And the story ends with her kind of going through these shipping crates of 55,000 movies that New York film nerds had rented for a decade that are now just kind of sitting in this weird, empty, abandoned building in Western Sicily.
And what is the planned use case of this? Like, is it supposed to be a magnet for... They can't show the films on the side of their barn because of copyright.
No, they can't. I think they can exhibit them actually, and they did. Like before the downfall of Mayor Scarby, they did a few kind of installations where they would be like, "Look, here's rare stuff from our new archive." And I guess the locals would just kind of wander through as if it were an installation piece, because the movies would be in English or whatever.
Yeah.
And they would just be kind of watching random scenes from.
It seems like a John Cage thing where the church should just be showing a continuous stream of like weird
of randomly chosen, every morning a computer picks 12 movies to show that day. And so thanks to this piece in the Village Voice, everybody found out that the collection was intact, but just sitting in an empty cement building as one guy, as there's electricity and money, slowly tries to put together an index of it. But the good news, there is a postscript. As of 2022, Kim's Video is back.
In New York or in Sicily?
In New York.
Ah.
Downtown, financial district. 10 years, after 10 years in the wilds of Sicily. Do you know Alamo Drafthouse? It's like an Austin-based theater chain that kind of, we've got 6 cool IPAs that we'll bring you during the movie. We're for the real film nerds. Turn off your phone. We're going to show a cool short subject from the 30s before your movie. It's one of these places.
No, I have not.
You do not sound impressed by this vibe.
I mean,
at
it's
all.
fine. It's just
fine.
The whole movies and beer and pizza thing is like, that's fine.
I don't love it because there's always somebody bringing somebody beer and nachos while you're trying to watch a movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, but there are plenty of film nerds who love it, and that's great. Alamo Drafthouse had followed the story of Kim's Video and Salemi with great interest. And they decided this is going to be a gimmick to bring people back to movie theaters after the kind of the precipitous, near calamitous COVID movie crash. So they they bought the rights to the Salemi archive. I'm sure somebody got a nice kickback in Western Sicily. I'm sure Pino's got a new car. And they got Mr. Kim back from the wilds. I guess he had been unsuccessful in making 2 more near-silent sequels to his monk prostitute epic, and was now in Mexico trying to sell LED street lamps to various state and federal governments.
That's happened to 3 different friends of mine.
Well, unlike your friends, he was unsuccessful, and he was happy to be brought back to announce that Kim's Video was going to reopen as a wholly owned subsidiary of Alamo Drafthouse. The business model now is you go to their downtown theater, which is like pretty near the stock exchange somewhere.
Oh yeah, famous theater district.
Downtown's coming around, I think.
I guess.
I don't know. I actually stayed at a hotel there a couple of years ago. I was pretty surprised, actually, in a good way. But while you're there are 15,000 cool Kim's Video things to rent out in the lobby, and rentals are free.
Whoa! So it's part of the whole jam.
Yeah, you got your whatever. Maybe you've got your membership that gives you discount Alamo Drafthouse screenings. But also, while you're there catching a movie, why not grab a couple? Kind of, the idea is, what if we can reclaim DVDs as like hipster, physical items, the same way that vinyl came back. You know,
well, and then you can crowdfund some selvage jeans and a chore coat and. the whole thing. Get
do
your
you believe
mustache
in this?
waxed.
That the kind of people who want to own a record as a physical item and as decor or whatever it is, because Spotify is just it's a train going by. Will those people want to buy? Would young people also want to buy or rent Blu-rays of movies they liked?
Well, the thing about Blu-rays is that they are beautiful, weirdly beautiful. Like the packaging actually it's big enough that you can see that
little blue stripe.
But you can see the picture of the film. It's not just like a CD with like color screen print on it. But I do think that I've been saying for a couple of years that my experience with the friend / relative who worked for Paul Allen as a librarian, her admonition that if it's not physical media, it belongs to not you, and it will go away in the blink of an eye if somebody decides you haven't paid the digital rights this month for it. And just recently watching Apple start to extort money from people for their their choked off.
And Amazon.
Yeah, right.
Amazon was like, you've already got a membership? Well, there's ads now. Too bad.
Unless you want to pay more.
Yeah.
And there's
a class action suit from people who were already paid up and still got the ads.
Yeah, and I think there's a class action suit against Apple now about you have made it impossible to manage our stuff. You're all funneling us antitrust into this funnel where now you want $10 a month for this thing. I think maybe Gen Z will be the generation that's like, we're just going to have 50 movies. We're going to buy them all at thrift stores for $1.
I was skeptical, but when I read this story, when I read all the way back to the history of George Atkinson, the reason why studios didn't believe in movie rentals is because they thought Americans are an acquisitive people. They will want to own The Sound of Music. They will not want to rent it for the night for $3. And the funny thing is, the studios were wrong.
Yeah.
And they made a ton of money on rentals. And then the studios were right, and they made a ton of money again selling DVDs of The Sound of Music,
right.
to families and for $15-20 for a decade or two. And then they were wrong again because everyone decided, I don't want that. That's old-timey. Grandma has DVDs. I'm just going to see what streaming has tonight. But it could swing back, I think, and I think you're right. But if you're at all serious about targeting what you want to watch, like I want to watch Cocoon. If you're just going to go to the Apple home screen and see what's new, it's not going to trouble you. But if you're ever like, oh, you know what we should watch tonight? I think like half the time you're going to find out it's maybe not easy to watch that thing.
Most people that listen to music will listen to a record over and over. But it's a certain kind of person that will watch a movie over and over. But definitely, I have started 30 Rock, the only show I've watched more than once. And then halfway through the season, it's no longer available on Hulu, but now it is available on Netflix. You see that.
It happened to me with Parks and Rec. I was like, no, I've got one season left.
I think that happened with Game of Thrones. Like all of a sudden, it's obviously an HBO product, but I wasn't able to watch.
Suddenly you didn't have Max for whatever reason.
Have whatever. And that tendency for movies that used to be over here where you were paying and now somehow they let it lapse, but it got picked up over here, but now you have to join a whole new. So yeah, I bet there's going to be, right now you could go to any thrift store probably and find the entire history of indie rock for 99 cents per record or less.
Yeah, and VHS tapes cheaper yet.
Yeah, right. And not have to subscribe to anything and not need to be online.
So maybe some pushback against the digital age will lead to young people kind of having some quasi-libertarian spirit of, no way, man, the corporations are not going to control me. I own my videos.
It's funny, I dropped my phone in the ocean, or rather I took my phone in the ocean. And
I've done that in Hawaii.
And I was
If you were at Kamaole 3, you did it at the same place I did it.
Kamaole 3, pretty close, but no, I was up closer to Lahaina, rest in peace.
First day, oh, that's sad.
Yeah.
What's it like?
It's pretty bad. Yeah. I mean, there's all of Lahaina that didn't burn, which is to say, like, you
The
can still
Safeway?
you can still go to Starbucks and you can still go to Walmart.
Yeah.
But you can't go to Mick Fleetwood's bar anymore.
I know.
But anyway, no, I went online and I was like, how do you live without a phone? I don't want a phone. Phones suck. I lived for a week without a phone and I was so glad. And I found all these websites that were like kind of the same sort of utilitarians of 10 years ago. But now they were living the simple life. And it was all this which apps to subscribe to that will keep you off of your phone.
Right.
And I really...
Which app will keep you off of your apps?
Yeah, I really followed along for a while, but it did seem like digital natives trying to live a life without digital, but without having no digital.
It could be that digital is just so ingrained now that, there's never going to be a pendulum away from cars or nice or warm coats because those things just become too ingrained in the culture.
No, what'll happen is that all cars will be remote driven. You won't own your own car, but there will be some nerds that are like, I still own a Honda Accord.
Well, in anticipation of that day, I think maybe let's end with a plea for Scarecrow video. Why not?
Give your money to well, no, wait.
First,
give
your money to Omnibus.
Join the Omnibus Patreon, and you should know you now get an ad-free version of the show delivered to you 2 days before.
48 hours
the
early.
Non-donors, you'll get our show on Tuesday with no ads if you just sign up at $5 a month.
If we called it like special VIP room access, imagine how people would go crazy for that.
We deliberated only making it available to people at the $10 or $20 level, but then we decided, no, we'll put it at $5. We'll put it at the basic level of joining the Patreon.
Give everything to, like we want the Bernie Sanders revolution. We want
That's right.
We want 1 million people giving us $5. We don't want one bad person giving us $5 million.
Oh, so not the Wu-Tang model then.
Yeah, the opposite of the Wu-Tang model. But if you have any money left over after your generous support of Omnibus...
Also give it to Omnibus. I don't know what you're trying to do. If you have money left over, you haven't given enough.
Like if you're the kind of person that supports different kinds of, pledge drives from public radio and TV, like Scarecrow is now a great arts nonprofit that you can support as a customer or a member. Check them out.
They do not serve pizza or beer. And that concludes Kim's video, entry 687.MT0542, certificate number 43318 in the Omnibus. Futureling's social media died an inglorious death, but if it still exists in your era in some form, you can find us at Omnibus Project, at Ken Jennings, at John Roderick. You can email us through time at theomnibusproject@gmail.com. You can hang out with other Futurelings by putting the word Futurelings into the internet and following it to the social media site of your choice, the node of your choice. You can send us mail to P.O. Box 55744, Shoreline, Washington, 98155. Looks like you've got some mail in your hand.
I'm not allowed to open it because you're still talking.
Go. Okay,
if you would just,
and go.
All right. Rip. Shred. This is... Whoa, this is kind of nice.
That's a lot of stuff.
It's like little decals. Chris and his son Orion like listening to Omnibus. They once lived in Bremerton, but now they live in small town Florida.
Okay.
Ooh, very near Saturn rocket launch pads.
Oh, yeah. I've been there. You've been there.
That's cool. They're big music and movie fans. Favorite band, Public Image Limited.
Sure.
Not
the great band.
Not John's favorite band.
The great band, PIL.
His son's favorite band is the White Stripes.
Okay, I can support that.
They're really telling us a lot about those. Do you want to know who their favorite directors are since we're doing a film nerd episode?
I don't know if I would know them, but yes.
Wes Anderson.
Okay, good. He's nice.
You can name a movie. Terry Gilliam.
Love it.
You can name a movie.
Love
Fellini.
Fellini, yes.
David Lynch.
Sure, this is all good stuff.
And Dario Argento. Who could disagree with any of this? I'm thrilled that you actually like handwritten letters. It is nice. Keep up the good work. It seems like maybe he was just trying to write a 1,000-word essay. Like he knows we like handwritten letters, and he's like, here are
"And
some of my
also-"
favorite music. Here's some of my favorite movies. Thank you so much, Chris and Orion. These are stickers from their favorite Orlando record shop. Here's a Beatles sticker in the drum logo.
Nice.
Here's a sticker repping their town of Titusville, Florida. That one's probably not from the Orlando record store.
Love it.
What else do we have here? A Dali photograph postcard from the Dali Museum in St. Petersburg.
Oh, I thought you meant DALL-E, the AI image generator.
It does kind of look like it was Dali generated, but it's real. Here's Park Avenue Records. Do you know, is that a store in Orlando? Probably.
I don't know if I've ever played there.
Speaking of physical media, here's their I Love Vinyl sticker.
Cool.
PIL.
All right, that sounds fun.
I'm going to give that to you.
Yeah,
You can
that's fun. I'll
put that on your guitar
right
case.
on my guitar case.
Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Chris and Orion.
That's great. Thank you very much. And then last but not least, as we said just a moment ago, go to our Patreon, patreon.com/omnibusproject, and help support your favorite podcast.
Listeners, from our vantage point in your distant past, we had no idea how long our civilization survived.
None at all.
Couldn't even venture to guess. Look, in our time, we didn't even know Stanley Tucci's name. And we certainly didn't know the name of Michael Corleone's first wife.
No. Santa
Barbarina.
Yeah, her name was Apollonia.
Apollonia. Nicely done. Whew. That's called tension and resolution. The omnibus way. We hope and pray that the catastrophe we fear may never come. If the worst comes soon, though, this recording, like all our recordings, may be our final word.
Dum, dum, dum.
But if Providence allows, we hope to be back with you soon again for another entry in the omnibus.